Good morning. You'll notice that I didn't get through all of the items in what a program looks like and discussion, brainstorming, etc. last week. So what I'm going to do right now is take you through some of the process to get your stories and get a paper really out there for your readers. Okay, so we'll go under the week 2 folder and we'll open the process, which was originally in week 1. The first one I want to look at with you is the distribution and passes. And I think it's really critical that you set right off the bat a schedule for your distribution. You can see that this was from 2002 and 3 and light years ago, but it really didn't change. I would sit down with my editor right before school started. We looked at the school calendar and figured out, okay, where are holidays, where is exam week, because that was always tough for the kids. Where are the key things that we need to work around. We came up with this, and it was then sent out beginning of the school year to every staff member. A lot of them posted it on their bulletin boards, but this basically told you when to expect a paper. And what I told my students is, if we didn't make a deadline, there would not be a paper. We're not moving a deadline, we're not changing it, we're sticking with what we have. And we never missed a deadline. This is an example of a press pass. I think I talked a little bit about the other day. I think it's important that they are given some sort of freedom to go out and do their interviewing and their coursework, but I also think they need to be responsible. So I tried to set some rules up for press passes. We hung them on lanyards. I think I mentioned that. And we put them in baseball card holders, punched them. They put them around their neck, and they hung on the board in the room. Some of them kept them in their bags or purses, and I decided that didn't matter to me as long as they don't abuse them. They've got to use them the hour they have them. This is also a good teaching tool. Somebody who's just learning InDesign or photography can do your cutting out. You see that person probably wasn't a great cutter outer and get a little bit of skills down there too. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you is this responsibility flowchart. First of all, this is like so confusing. You're going to look at it and go, what the heck? But if you want to know, the process. For us, it was a 4-week process. You go down there, there's week 4. And then we kind of had a down week usually where we could critique and do some reteaching and discuss what worked and what didn't work. But the thing I want to show you just overall is that we did 2 days of brainstorming, Monday and Tuesday, which means the Friday before you pass out a sheet, and if you have a little class time, fine. We then came up with kind of a tentative storyboard. And this kind of walks you through when stories are due. It's complicated. I'm going to show you one in a few minutes that I think is a little easier to understand. But I just put that in here for you. This is the sheet, as I said, that they were given on the Friday before Monday and Tuesday brainstorming. Every student in the class got these sheets. Okay, so here, the first page is blank if you try to open this. We had, there was always, Dow News, World News, Club News, take a number, just that was kind of like a by the numbers, an up close, in-depth look at someone or something, face off, a pro-con story. We had hot or not, speak up, which would have been your opinion, bylined article of opinion. First thing you thought about when you walked into school today, what is something interesting that you're doing in class? Off the record entertainment, what that means is entertainment going on outside of school, and then Dow-related entertainment. Weekend, things you like about Dow, things you hate about Dow. Lifestyle, things people do in groups. Food and fitness. Page 1, top stories, tell me something I don't know. Out of bounds, sports outside of Dow. Food and fitness. Game day, it's like the front page of sports. And locker room. And basically, you'll see there it says fill in at least 16 for full credit. I had no problem if people sat together and brainstormed if we had some time on the Friday, but when Monday started, they needed to walk in that room with it done. Some kids would get it done on Friday and hang it on their bulletin board so it was there and they didn't, lose it. But at the beginning of the year especially, kind of met them at the door and said, where is it? Let's see it. And so we would start the brainstorm process on Monday. On Tuesday, if they kind of ran a little dry, I would send them to computers and say, okay, what's happening in the world? And I think I talked a little bit about that already. But then, based on what these brainstorm sheets had, then we went into the actual creating of a storyboard. The thing about the brainstorming, too, is I did have, and I think I mentioned this also, someone writing them on the board, but also somebody sitting at a laptop or a computer typing in for each section. Now, it wasn't like Dow News, World News, Club News. We had a section called News, Feature, Sports, and Opinion. Those are really the 4 basics of the paper. We had 3 news pages. We had 2 opinion pages. We had 3 sports pages. Okay, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 feature pages at first. Then we went to 16 pages, and I can't remember the breakdown. But anyway, that gives you kind of an idea. All right, next thing on here. The story assignment. Okay. And I'm going to get back to something else that I kind of skipped here, but just a minute. With the story assignment, this is an older one. This is a little more complicated than really, people just went crazy over these. But the managing editors for a section would then give the story assignments once they have figured them out, the name of the journalist, the story topic, what page it's going on. They should ideally speak with a writing coach. They should have their rough draft checked, receive a hard copy back, edited, whatever. This is just any sort of thing that you can create that gives, the student an idea of what it is, they've been assigned. Again, I'm going to go back to how they get that assignment in just a minute. Actually, I'm going to go to it now. Where'd it go? Production skill. Okay, it's right here. This one's kind of out of order. All right, I think this explains it. It took me about 20 years of advising to come up with this, and this thing worked like a charm. Okay, they brainstormed Monday, Tuesday, and then the editors met after school to determine the storyboard. Those were managing editors. So I had an editor-in-chief, I had a managing opinion, news, feature, and sports. So they were over several pages. There were then page editors who each were assigned a page. And some of you go, hey, I don't even have 10 kids on my staff. You have to do with what you have. For me, this really worked, and certainly in our discussion, if anybody has some other questions or things that worked for them, this is a great time to talk about it. So these editors met and they put the storyboard together, and they were put on little mini pages, and then the editor would come in, or whoever was in the class that took charge, and go through the storyboard and tell them the stories that were chosen for that issue. Then the students were given one sticky note. Okay, one sticky note. The first thing that the student did is put his or her name on the sticky note. Okay, then let's say that their first choice is the page 1 top story, and so that's what they want. And it's a story about locker room thefts. So they would write number 1, locker room thefts, but they have to have a second option. So maybe their second option was on the opinion page, byline article of opinion about locker room thefts. So they would stick it on their first choice. So the thing is, the reason why we did this is a lot of times the kids in my 6th hour would say, no fair, it's we're the last class of the day and all the good stories are gone. And you want to give the stories to the people who have earned the right to have the good stories. So these sticky notes, there might be 3 names on the top story for page 1. But then how they were chosen, it was kind of like watching an auction happen. You would have the editors going, okay, I've got so-and-so here, and she's a good writer, but I can't use her. I've already given the story. And so they go, oh, I need her for the top story on the sports page. And they would then move around, and then they would fill out the forms for their story assignments and pass them out. I think the thing that is important to know is, I always told the students, you earn the right to get these stories. You miss deadlines, you don't do a good job on a story, you do anything that messes messes up production, you are probably going to be blacklisted. Everybody kind of comes in, on an even keel the first part of the year, but don't screw up. And of course, some of them did. Then you see that once they get their assignments on Thursday, then the page designers begin saying, okay, this is my lead photo. I got to tell the photo editor, managing photo editor, this is what I want, or the managing graphics editor, and then they would go to their people and assign to them. Okay, so they're working on stories on Friday, and then over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, rough drafts were due at the end of the hour on Wednesday. The 4 managing editors would come in. They saved them in the server under folders. They would read them, critique them, and then return those rough drafts with comments. Final drafts were due at the end of the hour on Friday. Okay, then Monday of week 3 was just getting ready. And, I say loose ends day. It was usually panic city day. Everybody's running around going, I don't have my story. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. So that Monday was just pretty much a crap day. We went into production 3 nights. For me, I stayed till 10. I think the current advisor leaves at 7, and they still get it done. There it says right there. And they proof, or they do their pages. I stayed from 3 until 10, and the kids kind of floated in and out depending on whether they had practice or homework or whatever. And then they would begin their final proofing as the pages get done, and they went through a series of first the copy editors read them, then the page editors, and then the managing editors, and went from there. The class discussion of deadline, mini lessons or reports. This was after the paper had gone to press. We did some sort of units, and then we had delivery day. Okay, the next one is the weekly status. I think you can get involved working with students. It's so individualized in there that you can have a kid who kind of gets lost in the between the desks or whatever, sits back in the corner picking his nose. And so I kept a status sheet, and I usually had a school service person grade these, or an editor could. But basically, they filled in their name, and then, what'd you do on Monday? Or were you absent? What'd you do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? They had to turn them every Friday to get points, so I had a weekly points. If they're absent, they have to make up the time. But if they had a snow day or a vacation day or whatever, they didn't have to. And they had to be filled out daily. So if a student on Friday was quick like filling them in and I noticed it, I would go over and give them the evil teacher eye. Okay, and then this is, again, besides a production schedule, I'd say this is another lucky stroke of brilliance on my part, and I don't know how the heck it happened, but this is a page editor checklist. All right, originally we had the editor sit down and do it and then give it to the managing editor. It's much better for the 2 of them to sit down. So the page editor has his or her page done. They say to the managing editor, come over here to my computer. Okay, so then they go through and they check to make sure spell check has been run. If there were errors where the writer had not run spell check, they wrote down the names of the writer. And has spell check been run on headlines? We had some terrible headlines because you just don't notice those. Did they run on cut lines? Did they run it on subheads? And then a name check. Has someone done it for every page? And that was usually an activity when we were in production. Some of the writers then who didn't have anything to do that day, we'd say, okay, we need to check page 8, do spell checks. We had a list of every school or student in the school, and they could check the spelling. The hard part is with somebody out of school, or someone that maybe wasn't in our directory. Photo credit or graphic credit for every item. There's a byline with the correct staff position. If there was something where names were spelled wrong more often, it was in the bylines. I couldn't believe it. Kids on our own staff, and their names would be spelled incorrectly. These are the texts we had. Was worldwide used for headlines, and if not, why? Jenna at that time was our design managing editor. She had to approve it if you wanted to go with bigger headline than what we had in our head scad. The date of the paper is correct. 0.25 stroke on all appropriate photos. If it's cut out, obviously it's not going to have one. There's no plus signs at the end of text boxes. If you've worked with InDesign, you know that means there's something else there, or you might just have nothing there, but you got to check them. And then final proof. The page was ready for proof at 7 p.m., and if not, why? then they turn that in to the copy editor, who then starts going through, and then the copy editor gives the sheet to the editor-in-chief or managing editor. No, actually, the managing editor already did it. The editor-in-chief, who then gives it to me. And what the kids never wanted to hear was me say, how did this page ever get to me? Because basically what I should be doing is skimming it, and I should be done with it in 10 minutes. Just reading it, making sure everything's okay. If there are big problems, somebody screwed up. This really eliminates big problems. Okay, do I have anything else? The only other thing I'll tell you is that at the end of deadline, and I don't have one here, and I'll try to find one and put it in here, we passed out a check sheet. If you were quoted in a source checklist, if you were quoted in a story or used in a story, was it correct? Was the reporter professional? Is there anything you want to say? And that kept the kids honest. It made the people realize that it did matter to me if they made, if my students made mistakes, and it was a great process to have. Okay, thank you very much. I'm done.